When I got to my car that day, I broke down and cried the whole drive home. I kept asking myself, like, girl, what is wrong with you? Why are you crying so much? I was highly triggered. It exposed all of this stuff from my childhood, especially when it came to my dynamic with rules aren't meant to be broken. They're meant to be rewritten altogether. If you're ready to play by your own rules, if you are a rebel with a cause, I think you'll love it here. Bring a friend, sit back, and enjoy another episode. Or don't. Remember, you write the rules here. Hello, my loves. You are now tuned in to another episode of Rima's Rules. Today, we're going to talk about how to stop crying and start creating the life of your dreams. This is a stack of tough love that I've prepared over here. This channel, and especially this episode, is rated R for real. So if you can't handle the tough love, get out of the kitchen. So a few years back, I spent most of the beginning of COVID, I would say, in Dubai with my older brother. And during this phase of his life, he was literally the living, breathing example of how to stop crying and just start creating your dream life. He wanted to take his health and fitness very seriously. So he was in the gym, getting his protein in, no excuses whatsoever. On one hand, watching him was extremely inspiring for me because I'm someone who spent most of my life in this vicious cycle of not being able to create the reality that I wanted when it came to my body goals. And, you know, he's seen me throughout the years go back and forth, but he also at this point had lived with me for an extended period of time. So he was able to see what my habits looked like. I was opening up to him and I'm like, honestly, like, I want you to help me. I've seen what you've been able to do. Like, I feel like I just need someone to hold me accountable because I'm just trying so hard, but nothing works. I don't know if there's something wrong with my body or my metabolism. Like, I want you to help me do it. Can you help me do it this time? And there was like a lot of desperation in my ask, but what he responded to me put me in check so fast. And it was probably one of the harshest reality checks I had, but I needed it. And he said, I only like helping people who want to be helped. And with that like one sentence, not only did he shut me up, I didn't even get defensive. I kind of just sat with it. You know how sometimes someone says something, which I hope you'll experience in this video, where it hits you hard, but the truth, you can't like deny that there's some strand of truth somewhere in it. And when I sat and reflected on it, it was true. I didn't want to be helped. I wanted to be able to blame everything else on why I wasn't getting results. I was, for the most part, doing the same thing, but expecting things to look different, literally. It felt a lot better for me to blame everything and everyone instead of take ownership of the fact that I actually wasn't as serious about things as I said I was. I wasn't being honest about what I was actually eating. Like I would kind of like delusionally ignore the fact that I would have cheat meals like 4 times a week. Or even when I was being relatively healthy, I would delusionally ignore the fact that I never walked throughout the day. Like I might hit a workout, but I just didn't live an active lifestyle. So when I would type things out in these little like calorie counters or whatever, I would say that I lived an active lifestyle when in reality, my lifestyle was very sedentary. I was setting myself up to expect different results, not do anything about it, not take ownership of my life, so that I can then blame things like the people in my life not having good habits, or my body just being different, or my metabolism just being different. This diet was supposed to work, but it's not working. At the time, I genuinely think I was addicted to feeling slighted. I was addicted to feeling like there's something wrong with me or something broken within me. And as long as I was choosing those feelings, I was going to create a reality that produced more of those feelings. Today, I am a completely different girl. I do not recognize that girl. I still love her, but I genuinely have less and less in common with her with every passing day. I want to talk you through the 7 rules that I followed to become a person who takes 100% responsibility over her life. I am someone who is crying way less and creating way more. I'm truly in awe of the life that I've created for myself. And these 7 rules are going to help you do exactly that. So let's get into it. Rule number 1, your results are telling the truth about you. When I was young, my mom used to lecture me all the time, and tell me if this happened to you too, about how my bedroom, the state of my bedroom, was a reflection of what was happening in my head. So the more messy and disorganized my bedroom was, that was just a reflection of the fact that I had a messy and disorganized internal world. And the defensiveness that I used to feel when she said that felt almost exactly the same as the defensiveness that I felt when I first heard that phrase, your results are telling the truth about you, on a podcast. And again, I had that experience where I felt so triggered hearing it, but there was truth to it. I knew it was true. And I think at that point, because I heard this about 2 years ago, I do think at that point in my life, the reason that I kept coming back to that sentence was because I was finally ready to start accepting the fact that my reality is actually in my control. I am the reason that things are or are not the way that they are or are not. I had been living in victim mode my whole life, because to believe that my results were telling the truth about me would then imply that I actually have a lot more power than I'm letting on. I had lived the majority of my life just kind of assuming that certain things do or don't happen for so many other factors that had so much less to do with me and so much more to do with these things that I can't control. And if you're wondering why anybody would ever want to be that powerless, it's because you need to consider the way that it feels when you finally are responsible for something. That is a scary feeling. In many ways, it's terrifying to feel like things are your responsibility, because if things don't go well or the way that you want them to, you have nobody to blame but yourself. And I think I was trying to protect myself from the way that my internal narrator would attack me. So it felt so much better to project that blame onto other things, to blame everyone who has ever wronged you, to blame your trauma-filled childhood, to blame your toxic ex, to blame your micromanaging boss for things that are truly actually in your control. That does not negate the fact that those people exist. It's just meant to reground you and remind you that if anything in your life doesn't look the way you want it to, you can always make a different choice and create something different. And until you are ready to do that, the rest of what we're going to talk about today is going to fall on deaf ears. So we needed to start with rule number 1, which is understanding that you are 100% responsible for what your reality looks like right now. Your results are telling the truth about you. Number 2 is to understand the big difference between victim blaming and taking responsibility. When I started really kind of learning about all of this reality creation, even like manifesting, law of attraction, some of it felt very victim blamey to me. I'm like, so you mean to tell me that like my toxic ex was my fault? Yes, he was my fault. You mean to tell me that my micromanaging boss is my fault? You mean to tell me that all these bad things that happen in the world are my fault? And the answer is less of a yes and no answer. And it's more about the fact that things aren't always your fault, but they are always your responsibility. You're always making a choice of how to respond to those things. You can have one circumstance and infinite options of how you can respond to that circumstance. I grew up with people who were raised in the same exact household under potentially the same exact traumas, who are each vastly different responses to those same traumas. But the bigger point here is when you are trying to blame your toxic ex, your boss, someone who hurt you, something that happened to you when you were younger, when you're in a mode of even trying to blame, you are feigning helplessness. It is true that things out of your control may happen to you. But the idea is, at what point do we take responsibility and start steering ourselves in the direction towards what we actually want, instead of fixating on the thing that we clearly don't want and didn't want to happen. If you were about to go to a job interview and you go to the parking structure or downstairs to where your car is parked and you realize your car got towed or even stolen, I don't know how you would respond. I know how I would respond, but I guess the bigger point is, if you decided not to go to the job interview, your car being stolen is not to blame on why you didn't get that job. My point is trying to separate what has already happened from what you want to happen is when you really understand what it looks like to take responsibility. I'm all for going to therapy. I've gone to therapy for years. I've had a lot of reflections and even journal entries on my past and trying to really understand, why am I the way that I am? And at some point that just becomes exhausting. Like, it can be helpful, but I realized that I was getting addicted to understanding this question of like why or how so that I could blame something. Like, if I really, really wanted to focus on how to have a healthy relationship right now, I wouldn't sit and fixate on things that happen in my childhood that lead to me behaving a certain way. I would just decide to change the way that I'm acting. And yes, once I've decided to change and I have a little bit more time and energy and I like the way my life is looking, it could be cool and worthwhile to look backwards and be like, oh, that's interesting. I realized I was doing that because of this. And I will say, like, if looking backwards helps you understand yourself so that you can take responsibility and do something better moving forward, I'm all for it. But you have to be very honest with yourself about why you're fixated on the past. In my case, I can be very real and let you know that in a lot of ways I was fixated on the past because I wanted to be able to blame it on something so that I wouldn't be mad at myself for things continuing to look the way that they looked. I wouldn't be mad at myself for continuing to repeat the same patterns because it would feel better to be like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that I'm just stuck in this pattern because that's what happened growing up. It's not victim blaming for me to tell you now that you are out of the situation where you were originally victimized, now that you are out of it, you need to take responsibility for what your life looks like moving forward. Rule number 3 is that your triggers are just mirrors. This really applies to everything. Anytime you're triggered, it says so much more about you and so much less about the source of the trigger. I mean, again, so many people can experience the same situation and not be triggered. So that's proof that the situation itself isn't inherently triggering, but there's just something about the way that you think or the way that you perceived it that led to that triggering you. And again, it's always an opportunity for us to look inward and understand, what about that hit me hard? Don't get me wrong. People say off the wall stuff. There's a difference between, I think, being offended by something or something being inherently offensive and something being triggering. Triggering is a sign that there's some sort of soft spot or weakness that this has exposed in you. So I'll tell you a story of where I really had to look in the mirror when it came to this. I was actually in business school applying to this leadership coaching program. I was super excited about it. And a bunch of students from even all around campus, not just the business school, were invited to apply. So again, it was super competitive. And I made it to the last interview round, which happened to be a group interview where you sit with a group of 5 people and you have to work through one of those problems where you guys have, like, there was no right answer. It was more so about like how you guys collaborate with each other. The 2 interviewers were just silently observing us with a notepad the whole time we talked. Like, they never interjected, so you never knew what they were thinking. It is the epitome of just being perceived, which we could have a whole conversation about how I used to struggle with that. And one thing about me, I have a lot of leadership skills. I'm a great leader. One thing that I do in these settings is I tend to really just facilitate the conversation. I try not to be the one that's constantly talking, surprisingly, because that's all I do on here. But I synthesize all the best ideas from what everyone is saying and try to make sure that we're moving forward towards a solution. So that is kind of the role that I was playing. But then there was this white girl who not only kept interrupting me in the few times that I did speak, but also on 2 occasions when we had to debrief with the interviewers, she credited someone else for 2 ideas that I came up with. And this was especially offensive to me because it's like, girl, I only said all of 5 things in this whole interview. You cut me off 3 of those times, and for those other 2 things, you credited someone else for my good idea. And I really want to check you because that's what I would normally do, but I don't want to look angry or aggressive in front of these interviewers. So I felt really like I was in a pickle. And so I chose not to correct her, not to butt in, not to say anything to the interviewer, but to just put on a strong face, keep playing nice, and just continue on. When I got to my car that day, I broke down and cried the whole drive home. I kept asking myself, like, girl, what is wrong with you? Why are you crying so much? I was highly triggered. It exposed all of this stuff from my childhood, especially when it came to my dynamic with white people. We don't even need to get into it because it's funny. As I'm talking about it, I don't even resonate with the version of myself that was triggered anymore because I'm so untriggered these days. But at the time, I kept feeling like, oh my God, here's this pattern coming all over again of feeling silenced. I had white teachers growing up who were Islamophobic and pretty racist, and I constantly felt voiceless. So you can kind of see how this theme came up again where I felt voiceless. I felt like Not only was she speaking up over me, but I also didn't get to say my side of the story. And now I don't think I'm going to get this thing. Fast forward, you guys, not only did I get the thing, but at our first kickoff event, she also was there. So she got it too. And she was so happy to see me. And I was so thrown off because in my mind, I'm like, you are an op. Like, I thought we hated each other in this interview. And it was such a humbling moment to show me, like, she did not experience that the way I experienced it. Should she have cut me off? Should she have credited my opinions or my ideas to other people? No. I mean, that's just common etiquette in reading the room. But was it personal? Clearly not. Like, the girl clearly liked me. At the end of the day, while I empathize with the pickle that I was in, I could have said something. I chose not to say something. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because had you come to me in 2018 when all of this went down and tried to tell me that I chose not to speak up and I need to take responsibility for that, I probably would have cussed you out. As you can see is the theme with a lot of my videos. Like, a lot of this tough love I'm giving you are things that if someone told me years back, I might have cussed them out. So if you want to cuss me out, don't do it, but I don't blame you. So my point is, I'm just kidding. I don't think I would have cussed you out. I think my feelings would have been hurt, but I would have sat with it, just like I talked about with my brother in the comment he made. I would have sat with it and eventually like marinated on the truth of it all. And the truth of it all in this specific situation is I was triggered because I had this wound of powerlessness and voicelessness, especially when it came to certain race dynamics. And I was recreating that. Read the book, The Power of Now. Read the book, The Courage to be Disliked. There's such a theme around addiction to these negative emotions because this is the story that we have in our head. My story was that I'm helpless, I'm voiceless, I'm powerless. People are always trying to take advantage of me. People are always trying to take power away from me. And so I really believe that I didn't speak up that day because I wanted to maintain that story, because if I did speak up, then I would be taking my power back. And who do I have to blame for all of these feelings then? So anytime that you feel triggered, including but not limited to at any given point in this video, I want you to write it down. Write down the thing that triggered you and reflect on it or even journal about it and see what comes from there. Rule number 4 is that forcing or forfeiting are just two sides of the same faithless coin. What this means is if you are trying to force an outcome or if you just give up and forfeit and say, you know what, I just give up on wanting this at all, those are both signs that you are lacking in faith. Now, I want to clarify what faith means because it means a lot of things to a lot of people. And just for the purposes of all of our conversations, for me, faith is in this knowing, this certainty that life is unfolding for your greatest good. That's really what I mean when I say that those are signs that you are lacking in faith. You are lacking in the faith that things are going to work out for your good. And honestly, I see the words faith and power interchangeably. Like when you're in your power, you don't force things and you definitely don't forfeit. Like, you know that everything is working out regardless what your circumstances or daily ebbs and flows of life look like. You're not so easily shaken. You're not constantly looking for proof that things are working out for you. A perfect example of this for me is when it came to love and dating. I just always knew. I knew I was going to find someone. I knew it would be amazing. And I knew that when that time came, it would be lovely. So I really just focused my life on enjoying my life. Like, I didn't feel like I needed to force it. When I would have breakups, they wouldn't shake me to my core of like, oh my God, my life is over. Am I ever going to find somebody? I certainly wouldn't continue relationships, especially when I really started going deep in my self-love journey. I wouldn't force people into an image of who I thought they were because I knew that the right person was there for me. And the quicker that I cut off the wrong person, the more I would create space for the right connection. So whenever I would very naturally have not so aligned experiences when it came to dating, I certainly wasn't going back and saying men are trash or where are all the good men? Are any good men even out there? And I absolutely wasn't trying to force things to continue that were not right for me because I had a lot of faith and I didn't need anything in front of me to justify why my faith needed to be there. I'm giving you this much detail for a reason because there are other areas of my life where I lacked faith. And if you are anything like me, which I know that you are, there are areas in your life where you have a lot of faith. And there are areas in your life where you are probably lacking in faith. And for me, this became super clear to me when one of my really good friends, we would go on walks every week, and we'd have these long talks. And she would share with me that her greatest fear in life was to die alone. Like, she would genuinely have this overwhelming anxiety that she was never going to find somebody. And that was really what governed her days. Like, she was constantly stressed about that. And when I tell you, I could not resonate 1%. I kept wanting to just inject her, and we were both single at this point in life. I kept wanting to inject her with the certainty that I was feeling. I kept wanting to inject her with the faith and the confidence that I had, but obviously I couldn't. And if I'm going to be very real with you, there were little moments where I would feel like I'm judging her. Like, why is she acting like this? She's amazing. She's beautiful. She's powerful. She's strong. She's so accomplished. She's such a pleasure to be around. Like, girl, stand up. And then God checked me, as it always happens when you start to like lack humility a little bit. She, during this time, just decided she wanted to get serious about the gym. She just decided. She started going to the gym. She started eating healthy. She transformed her body within a matter of months. So here is someone in front of me who is genuinely losing sleep about the fear that she's not going to find someone, but who put it in her head that she wants to lose weight and transform her body and look like a baddie. And she did that in 3 months, something I've been trying to do for my whole life. She was able to put her head down and get it done in 3 months. And it was such an interesting juxtaposition for me of an area of her life where she clearly had a lot of faith. Like, she trusted herself. She knew, oh yeah, it's easy. I just need to go to the gym, and I just need to make sure I watch what I'm eating, and I just need to have fun with it, and it'll come. I bet you she did not spend a second of time questioning whether she would be able to achieve that result in her life. That probably felt so much more in her control. Whereas me, someone who didn't spend 1 second of life questioning whether I would find somebody, was agonizing instead about whether or not I'd ever see myself in the mirror and like what I looked like. Something that to a lot of people seems very straightforward, because it is. But it just goes to show you that faith, or the lack thereof, will literally make or break what you end up creating. And when you look at your life, whether it's dating, career, trying to, get your dream house or dream apartment, if you are in the energy of trying to force things like I was with my body goals, then that is a sign that you lack faith in your ability to receive and maintain those things. When it came to my body, I was planning everything, like the most type A type of plan. I remember I would like print out these calendars and try to project out how many pounds I was going to lose on this plan. And if I keep these calories and work out like this, then I'm going to lose 2 pounds this week, and then 1.5 pounds this week. And then I was literally planning it to a T. And on the very inevitable day where I just either fell off or wasn't perfect, because obviously those would come very soon after I planned it, I would just completely abandon the whole thing, because I would think I'm done. I need to give up. This sucks. And then I would just repeat that cycle over and over because I lacked faith. If any of the behaviors that you just heard me list sound like what you're doing, whether it comes to dating and you're just trying to like go on all these dates, because if I go on 50 dates by the end of the year, the probability of me finding my husband is so much higher. Or if you're just giving up on things that you know you want altogether, it is a sign that you need to revisit your faith and really step back into the power that you do have in that situation and act from a place of power and not from a place of fear. And once I've really started applying this to other areas of my life, I realized that the common thread is, number one, having an unshakable belief that you're going to get what you want. Number two, not allowing the daily ebbs and flows of natural life to shake that unshakable belief, because it's unshakable, right? If you have a bad date, or if you get rejected from a job, and even the positive things, like you should not feel validated or invalidated by the little things. You should have such a strong belief that you don't actually need evidence to justify its existence, because you know it's there. Start acting and behaving like the person who already has that thing before you even get it, which brings me to rule number 5. I need you to stop becoming her, please, and start being her. Like all these becoming her videos, becoming her. Girl, you're never going to be her if you keep becoming, okay? You're going to be so addicted to the becoming phase that you might look up and realize that you've spent your whole life becoming something and never actually being it. You might have an addiction to self-development. I had an addiction to self-development. I was so addicted to self-development that I would never allow myself to actually develop, because then I was like, what would the purpose of life be then? If I actually get what I want, what will I read? What will I watch? Will I have a purpose? Who will I even be if I'm not becoming something? And I realized that with this mindset, while there's nothing wrong with constantly wanting to learn and grow, when you are dangling this happiness at a certain goalpost that you continue to move, you are sending yourself down a very long, depressing, tiring path of never feeling like you are good enough. I see this a lot with just all of the self-help content that is out there. While I love it and I'm certainly a consumer of it and it has added so much meaning to my life, the point of learning all this stuff is so that you can enjoy your life. The point of being better is so that you could feel better, not so that you can constantly convince yourself that you need to be better all the time. It's so you can sit with that and actually enjoy all the progress that you've made, actually enjoy the fruits of your labor. Like imagine, let's just take that metaphor. Imagine laboring all day in your garden for all these amazing, beautiful, magical fruits, and then just letting them spoil, and you never get to sit down and try them. You never get to share them with the people that you love. You never get to create more magical creations and recipes with the fruits of your labor, but your life is just laboring for the fruits that you never get to enjoy. Like, does that make any sense to you? It doesn't make any sense to me. Be her today. Like, stop lying to yourself and telling yourself the thing that I told myself for way too long, which is, I'll let myself be her when I do that. In 10 pounds, then I'll feel good. After I get my boyfriend and I can see us together, then I'll feel secure in myself. After I get this job, then I'll let myself relax. Like, you constantly attach a feeling, a desired feeling, to an outcome. And that is a trap. It's a scam, okay? Trust me, it's a scam, because I promise you two things. Let me know once you've really incorporated this. I want you to let me know I'm right, because I know I'm right. The two things that I promise you is, number one, the feeling that you have on the way is going to be the feeling you keep when you're there. So if you're feeling not good enough, you're going to end up in a body that is 10 or 20 pounds lighter, maybe, still feeling not good enough. I've been there a few times, and it feels like shit to work that hard and to still keep the feeling that was driving you, because you don't magically switch the feeling. You won't even let yourself see the outcome for what it is. And the second thing that I promise you is, if you give yourself the feel-good feeling right now, whether it's I want to feel relaxed, I want to feel loved and desired, I want to feel attractive. If you give that to yourself right now, you're going to get the thing that you want so much faster. And the best part is you'll actually get to also keep the feeling when you get there. So not only will you be a magnet and start attracting the things that you want, the job, the love, the money, the body, the apartment. When you get those things, you will also get to sit in that feeling that got you there. It's funny because as I was writing out the notes for this video, in the beginning of this video, I was listing all these things that I have. And I was saying, like, my dream apartment, my dream relationship, my dream body. And I'm like, whoa. I saw like the internal auditor in my head, like, you don't have your dream body yet. Remember, like, you want to lose more weight? And I'm like, yeah, but I feel like I have my dream body. I feel like and this isn't me trying to even like strategically apply what I'm telling you. It felt true for me to say I have my dream body. Even though I want things to change more, I still feel so good. Like, the feeling that I thought could only ever be accessed 10 pounds from now is being accessed right now. And so yes, it's going to continue to fuel me to work out and feel good and take care of myself, which will inevitably get me that body. But the fact that I already feel right now like I have it is tea. And I know this feeling because I felt like I was attractive and desired and so in love before I ever met Ahmed, because that's how I felt about my life. And when I'm telling you to be her, I want you to imagine the feeling that you think is exclusively only accessed within this dream life that you have in your head. I want you to figure out how to access parts of that feeling, if not all of that feeling, now. Find things that you're going to do every single day to be her, be within the feeling state of what you would imagine it would be like to actually be her. Stop becoming her, because then you're still withholding, and be her today. Take an extra 10 minutes in the morning and relax as you're making your coffee, because the dream version of you is relaxed. Take time to send gratitude messages to the people in your life who you love and who love you back so much, because the future version of you is so loved and desired and filled with amazing relationships. And you'll start to see that that future version of you is only a future version of you because you've withheld it. If you decide to reach for those feelings right now, you will look up one day, very soon, into the mirror and be like, oh my God, I am her, aren't I? Whoa, I'm her. And it's going to feel so good. Number 6 is that you are literally always choosing how you want to feel. This was a hard pill for me to swallow as well. I recently read the book, The Courage to Be Disliked, and whoa, that book whipped me into shape. And it made so many undeniable arguments that really all point to this idea that we are always selecting the feeling that we want to have. And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier around there are multiple ways to react to one given circumstance. And that's just kind of proof. You're not helpless. You're not, a slave to your emotions, like people like to say. You are selecting the emotion because you think that that emotion is the most helpful way to get to your objective. In the book, he actually gives this example where a mom is like yelling at her child, yelling at them for something. Let's just say the child didn't clean their room and the mom is screaming at the top of her lungs, how many times did I tell you, da 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 da. And then the mom gets a phone call and code switches instantaneously to being kind and respectful to this person on the other end of the phone, and then hangs up the phone, and then sure enough switches right back into anger and rage and yells at her child. We've all done this. Like being with your man at a restaurant and fighting and being all self-righteous and mad. And then the second that the waiter comes up to take your order, you switch to being kind and respectful and soft-spoken so that you could, let them know what you want to eat. And then you switch back on and start being mad again. You chose each of those seemingly mutually exclusive emotions because your objective in your fight with your man is to be right, to be self-righteous, to let them know that they've wronged you, to let them know that they hurt you and they should never do it again. And you decided that the most effective emotion to help you achieve that objective of being right is anger. But when the waiter came to take your order, you also decided that kindness, clear-headedness, calmness, respect are the best emotions to help you play out your objective of them not messing up your order, or even worse, spitting in your food because you were rude to them. You are always hand selecting your emotions based on what you're trying to get out of a situation and which feeling you think is going to help you as a vehicle to get there. So the more worthwhile conversation here is, why are you choosing the emotions that you're choosing? Even ones that don't feel good, they feel heavy, they feel negative. So examples for me, why was I choosing to resent certain people in my family? Well, because resentment makes you feel self-righteous. It makes you feel, in my case, this addicted feeling that I had of being wronged or being slighted. It also gives you this hope that if you were in their situation, you wouldn't have done what they did. And so resentment is a way of, again, trying to help you feel that feeling of self-righteousness and judgment that sometimes, unfortunately, can be intoxicating. How was my intense grief helping me? And how does it often help me in random moments? It reminds me that I had somebody in my life that was so worth missing. And honestly, my grief reminds me, it's almost like this little pulse check of whether I'm focusing on the right things at any given point in my life. Like, am I losing sight of what's actually important? Sometimes I really do leverage grief indirectly to help guide me and focus on what I need to be grateful for while I still have it. And one more recent one for me, I hope it's helpful for me to model some of my things for you too, but my fear of flying. I'm like, why would I want to be freaking terrified on this airplane? Come on, like, why? Why would I ever want to be this terrified? I believe that my fear is helping me stay safe. My fear is helping me believe that I'm in control of something. And if I'm just scared enough or on guard or alarmed enough, then I can keep myself safe. So until I decide that I have a different objective, one of two things. I either need to decide I have a different objective, which I don't imagine I would ever have a different objective than to be kept safe, but decide on either a different objective or convince yourself that there's a different feeling that can help you get to that objective. In my case, I would need to convince myself that the best feeling to help me feel safe is to feel calm, because that would show me that I'm safe. So the more my body shows me that I'm calm, the more I believe that I'm safe. And that's the whole point here is you have convinced yourself if there are feelings that you don't like having, you're not helpless. You're choosing them. You just need to do the work of either choosing a different objective. So with the family situation, I didn't want to be right anymore. I'm like, I don't even care. This doesn't feel good. I don't want to carry this. I'm over it. I don't want to be right. We're all doing life for the first time. Who cares who's right at this point? So I decided that I don't want to be right. I just want to be happy. And so when I decided that I want to be happy, my objective is to live a lighter life. I remember vividly, I decided I don't care about being right anymore. I care about focusing on the little universe that I'm building with my husband and our future family. And as soon as I shifted my focus to that, it's like the resentment just dissipated because I'm like, oh, I don't need that feeling anymore because I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on this. So what feelings do I need to build this in the way that I want it? Oh, I need to feel light and I need to feel like life is fun and I need to feel grateful. Like those are the feelings that are going to help me focus on my goal of building the environment for our future family. Say that to say, my love, sometimes those bad feelings that people try to pin as good or bad are not always bad. Be real with yourself. Like if you're angry, there's a reason that you're angry. You've convinced yourself that's helpful. And it might be. I mean, I can imagine myself as a mom in the future. I know I did this when I was a teacher. I would absolutely leverage fake disappointment to get my students to do something that I wanted them to do. I'm going to absolutely probably leverage anger like my parents probably did when I got my first speeding ticket to like instill the fear of God into them so that they don't speed and hurt themselves. I bet you they acted way more mad than they probably were in those moments because their objective was to really highlight the seriousness of a situation. And then they probably went back in their rooms and started laughing together. So my point here is don't villainize your heavier emotions. Ask yourself why they're there and really get clear on what they're helping you do. And if you no longer like either the feeling or the objective, you are always in a position of power to change them. Last but not least, rule number 7, stop blaming others for expectations of them you were never supposed to have. When you really start to become a masterful creator of your own reality, you will realize how personal this journey is. Nobody is responsible for what this external universe around you looks like but you. And that is going to be a little bit more difficult if you're living with someone, if you're like me and you're married to someone, if your best friends aren't people who really care about this or aren't necessarily taking the most responsibility for their life. I'm not gonna lie, like it is a little bit challenging to understand how to coexist in the relationships that you really love and really value while other people might not necessarily have the same goals as you. And I think it really, really comes down to just understanding that last sentence. Even if you are around people like my husband who are taking responsibility over their reality, who are actively creating their own reality, he wasn't trying to lose weight. So I shouldn't have been expecting him to eat the kinds of foods that I would have needed to eat to lose weight. I shouldn't be mad if he's trying to go to the gym 3 to 4 times a week instead of 5 times a week like me. And like I was doing that. I'm not gonna lie, especially at the beginning. I'd be like, why do you have to order pizza 3 times a week? Why are we always getting on an airplane every month? Like I'm getting into this routine and you always want to put me on an airplane and it's so hard to be in my routine when we're not at home. Like anytime you're blaming someone else for something that has nothing to do with them and it is really just your choice and your responsibility, it's because you are terrified of the implications that you are actually in control, that this is actually your reality to take responsibility for. It is so much easier, like I said before, to blame somebody than to look at yourself in the mirror and say, your actions are not aligning with the things that you say that you want. So in my case, it felt a lot better to just blame all these other things and claim that they're not in my control than to look inward and be like, well, what is in your control, girl? Stop complaining. What is in your control? Yes, you guys are traveling every month. Either don't go with him or go and figure out how you're going to be active. Like there are so many options that don't require you to act like a baby and keep crying. So if you really are committed to this, like you say you are, you will get creative and see that there are multiple ways to create the reality that you want. And you just don't want that, do you now? You just want to cry about it. And yeah, it's true. At that point in time, I just wanted to cry about it because it felt a little too hard to be creative. So I wanted the blame more than I wanted the responsibility. What ends up happening when you finally agree that it's your responsibility and you finally embark on this very personal journey, regardless who or who isn't coming with you, 3 things start to happen. Number 1, you feel like a boss ass bitch because you're doing it. Like you don't need anyone's validation. You don't need anyone to hold your hand. You feel like a boss because you're like, I'm really doing this, aren't I? And that develops so much self-trust and self-respect. Number 2, you start feeling so excited and grateful in the moments where you do happen to be aligned. In the moments where your family does start making healthier foods. In the moments where, my husband wants to go on daily walks with me. I don't expect them because that's not an expectation I need to put on him. But when he does want to do it with me, it becomes so much more fun because I'm like, wow, that's so cool that like I get to do this thing with you, even though this is a journey that I'm on. In the moments where he does come to the gym with me, even though this morning, for example, I woke up and went to the gym all by myself, like I do a few times a week, but in the moments where we just happen to be on the same schedule, it's so much more fun and you get to feel so grateful because you don't feel entitled and like it's an expectation. And last but not least, what happens here is when you start walking in your own journey and really start taking ownership of your life. Let's go back to the example at the beginning with my brother. What you do speaks so much more loudly than the things that you say. There's just this feeling that you will give other people when you are doing that can't even be explained in words. And I know you've experienced it. You've seen somebody model a certain behavior that you want to have. You've seen somebody model a certain lifestyle and they don't even have to say anything, but it just speaks volumes and it has inspired you. It has planted the seed in you of, hey, I think I could do that. That seed has to come to fruition at some point in time. So when you are walking in your purpose, you're inevitably going to inspire the people around you. You have no control or no say in when or how that happens, and you're not entitled to that. But I'm just letting you know it is an added benefit of just being on your shit. You're going to inspire the people who are around you to get on their shit too. For me, realizing that I am in charge of my own reality, that I'm the creator of my results, that I'm 100% responsible for the life that I create and I enjoy has been super transformational. Like I will literally never be the same now that I not only understand this, but literally get to live it and watch it play out. There's that Marianne Williamson quote, our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And she like goes on to say like, it's our light, not our darkness that scares us because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And when you do see it, there are a lot of implications to that. When you finally show yourself how powerful you are, you have to act in accordance with that. And some of us try to really hide in our own blind spot, hide in our own shadows, because we know if we allow ourselves to see ourselves for who we truly are as these amazing creators of our reality, you can't go back from that. And some of us are very intimidated by the amount of responsibility that comes along with that. But as soon as you get fed up with what it's feeling like to be in this feigned powerlessness, you're going to tap into your own power and realize that you wished you had done it 10 years earlier, like I do. And that's literally why I'm here making videos like this. I want you to realize that you don't need to cry and throw your hands up in the air. You don't need to try to force these outcomes and live in this anxiety around things that you really want. You can really just get up, dust yourself off, straighten out a little, and create the life that you want. Stop recreating this helpless dynamic at every turn just so you can look and be like, see, I told you guys I'm helpless. See, I told you nobody wants me. See, I told you I can't get a job. Stop trying to be right, okay? And start trying to be happy. Stop trying to be right and start trying to feel better. That is it. That is the bottom line. Okay? Whatever you say about your reality, you will be right. So instead of trying to be right about all these fixed mindsets and limiting beliefs that you have, start focusing on how you can feel better. I'm really excited to just go through this journey with you and just hear from you how this is impacting you in your day-to-day. Like, it really can be as quickly as tomorrow. The second you start accepting that you're responsible, that's when things will get very, very interesting. And look, I'm not going to tell you to like or subscribe. I know you hear that more than enough. But what I will tell you is, if you enjoyed this video, bring a friend with you next time. Let's leave people even more powerful than we found them. I love you so much, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.